Welcome everyone on this webinar of innovation with 3D printing in healthcare sector. We have brought this webinar with the technology partnership of Stratasys. And we are going to talk about today that how 3D printing technology has been helped out in healthcare sector for patient point of care, clinical testing and trials, and also for medical device development companies. How this technology has helped out and why this technology has been needed for healthcare sector. How this technology has helped out from conventional to this technology. So we'll talk about all of these topics today, and I will show you some examples that how this technology has helped out the institutes, researchers, surgeons, or medical device development companies using the 3D printing technology. So let me introduce myself here. Myself, Saksham Rastogi, and I am application engineer for additive manufacturing, and I work in ALTEM technologies. So just to start, before the about this technology and application, I want to introduce our organization, ALTEM Technologies. ALTEM Technologies is a 3D innovation platform company, and we have been associated with many of the organizations for product selling, and we provide the product solution for different scenarios for different sectors, from designing to simulations, from 3D printing to 3D scanning, also for material developments, and also with the introduction of new 3D bioprinting into the market for new drug discoveries or new material developments. We are into the market since 2011, and we have been able to bag lot of industrial awards from like MSME, from Stratasys for Strategic Partner Award, from Frost and Sullivan for Most Innovative 3D Printing Company of India, and also many awards by Stratasys for 3D printing. So let's understand that what are the challenges that has been faced or that has been observed into the healthcare sector from different organizations and institutes. So first of all, if we talk about the current modeling methods that are being made conventionally, that has been supplied to the research institutes, healthcare institutes, or the medical device companies, is that the for the particular model, for a particular anatomical model which has been asked or which has been required, that is provided with a very high cost depending upon its complexity. And also with such complex models, it takes a lot of time to manufacture and to develop, to fabricate those models, and it makes also process very difficult when it comes to very case specific or patient specific complex anatomical models, which can mimic the biomechanical properties of the actual cadavers. Also, it brings the challenges of continuous handling of such high volume required models by the companies. And also, it makes a very complicated workflow, and with the poor integration of segmentation softwares. So with the segmentation softwares where we can convert our DICOM to 3D files, but with the 3D files, how we can create, how we can fabricate those 3D files into the physical models by using the conventional method. So those workflow makes are very complex with the when it comes to the very complex anatomical models. And also when we store the such models, we need a very specific space and specific environment to store such models, and we have to spend the amount for their storage also for so we can say the inventory cost also involves for keeping or storing of such large models. And when it comes to the training and educational models, where we require the animals or human cadavers or off the shelf models, the most common challenge that we face, that the doctors or the clinical institute that they face, is they do not get the accurate representation of their target anatomy. So suppose for a neurosurgery or for a orthopedic surgery where they require a very case specific clinical models or trial models, they do not tend to get a very accurate representation of their target anatomies. And also for such cadavers, they require a particular space, a demonstration space, and a particular environment to maintain those cadavers. So those also require to maintain it, and it requires a cost also there. The cadavers are also in some areas are very expensive depending upon what complex or what case specific you require for the clinical trials or for the training models. That can become very expensive, and also it raises very ethical concerns when it comes to usage of animals or the human cadavers in any country or in any geographical area. So to overcome those challenges, Stratasys has come out with two technologies. We are offering two technologies here by Stratasys. So first is the fused aversion modeling, where we use a single material thermoplastic filament. This solid polymer material is converted into a semi-liquid state, and through a semi-liquid state, the material it extrudes through the extruder with a computer-controlled tool paths to build the parts layer by layer. This process involves two materials, support and the model material. So the model material creates your final geometry, as you can see on the screen. The skull model, the lower and the upper part of the skull. And the support material, it fills out the cavities inside it, which can be removed out with a very easier process. So this technology helps to make the anatomical models which require only single material, rigid material, which can mimic or which can give you the design validations, or which can helps out the surgeons to understand the anatomy before entering into the operation theater. The second technology involves here is the polyjet technology, which is a multi-material technology. In this process, in this technology, we use a photopolymeric material, which is extruded through a series of nozzles through jets, and these materials are being cured using the UV light. With this technology, we can mix up to 7 materials at once, and these 7 materials combination can create more than 5 lakh plus colors and unlimited material combinations into the same part. So as you can see on the screen in the photos, that we can create the parts which can with the rigid plus rubber material, which can mimic your rigidity and plus the softness of a tissue. Plus also we can, with the combination of the color combinations, we can do the clear material, so that you are able to see the unobstructed view inside the anatomy. With the different color combinations, you are able to vary the different arteries and the different segmentations of the anatomy, different tissues altogether, which enables the surgeons or which enables the users to understand the anatomy in a much more efficient manner. So with these two technologies, we can create the digital anatomies of various departments, of various categories, like for the neurosurgery, for musculoskeletal, cardiovascular, digestive system, urology, dental surgery models, or implant surgery planning models, or orthopedic models. So any kind of the segmentation, any kind of the anatomy, tissue, blood vessels, organs, any kind of the anatomy or of the human or animal cadavers, we are able to make it through the combination of these two technologies. So the process of how we can bring the DICOM images into a 3D physical model. So the process involves is the DICOM images from the patient scan. So the scan can be used from the CT or MRI scans, depending upon the what anatomy models you want to extract and convert into 3D. So these DICOM data images are being converted into 3D models, and these 3D models are being opened in our software, which is called GrabCAD Print software. This GrabCAD Print software is been able to identify the segments. So we can identify the segments into assembly, and each segment we can assign with different materials with different color combinations. And after assignment of our materials, we can give the print to the printer. And our PolyJet printer or FDM printer, it prints a part with the complete automated process so that you can work upon simultaneously with your different works. You can leave the printer on its own and it take care of the rest of the printing process. Then after final print, you get a very clean part in your hand with different color combinations and different material combination of rigid plus soft material so that you can identify between the rigidity of in that particular anatomy and also the softness of a tissue along with the blood vessels or the tissues around it in different color combinations. The applications that are involved here is to make the anatomical models which can be used for the surgical plannings, surgical training models, or the educational models. For medical devices, so for the anatomy testing or prototyping, for the design and engineering applications where you want to test out your general implant models or general medical device models by using the anatomy of a particular segment. You can also do the patient-specific medical devices like fibula guides or implant molds, which are biocompatible materials and which can be used into the operation theater for the implantation of for the guidance of the implants. We can also use it for the medical device companies who makes the devices to be used for the patient care applications, and it can be used for the prototyping purposes from design to the functional testings for the engineering applications. So the first application that involves, which is very important and which brings out a very convenience to the surgical preparations for the patient point of care. So by use of 3D printing, we can improve the clinical outcomes, which are being based on the real patient anatomy. This workflow can optimize the therapeutic approach before entering into the operation theater by the surgeons. So as you can see in the photo that a liver is there with the multi-material and multicolor combination. This simulate the live tissue characteristics by varying material properties. You get an obstructed view of hidden tissues and the blood vessels. And also you gain the physical, spatial and tactile benefits which your computer models, which your soft models on the computer CAD models cannot match. So such anatomical models for the patient point of care can be used into various departments, like for the cardiac surgeries, for urology departments, neurology, lung surgeries, digestive systems, or orthopedic departments, for gynecology, or any departments which requires very complex surgeries, which with the use of the 3D printing, with the use of the 3D printed models, you get to identify the complexity of the particular disease, and you can plan out your surgeries to decrease the uh, surgery time and the blood loss into the operation theater. So this is one example from Amrita Hospital for a congenital heart disorder surgery planning. The challenge was here that the patient's heart chamber were wrongly connected and there was a large hole present. The absence of the important artery connecting his heart to his lungs. And this complete disorder made it very complex, and temporary solutions were given over permanent remedies. But with the help of a 3D printed model in the doctor's hand, uh, it helped him to indicate the details about the hole and the defective anatomy, and also they were able to design the artery and insertion practicing that was being done on the model before entering into the operation theater. This is one more example from the Manipal Hospital in Bangalore for a very complex neurosurgery procedure. So as you can see in the photos that the MRI scan of the DICOM images has been converted into the 3D model for 3D printing, and the brain section was converted into the four halves for better handling of the model, so that they can visualize the shape and the depth of the tumor to formulate the surgical planning. So this helps to this 3D printing procedure can help the doctors and the surgeons and any experts, they can see the models in 3D into their hand, and they can identify the placements, the locations of a particular disease, or the understand the complexity of that particular case in a much more efficient manner before entering into the surgical planning. This is one more example from Ludhiana Medivis Hospital from Punjab, where the patient was suffering from a pulmonary artery venous malformation. And as you can see that they have used a 3D printed model into the operation theater to understand the location of the arteries. Such a 3D model has helped the doctor to reduce the surgery time from 4 hours to 1.5 hours, and also the blood loss reduction up to 90%. So let's hear from the doctors from Ludhiana Medical Hospital that how this 3D printing technology has helped them for such complex cases.
Guru Nanak Dev Engineering College was started in 1956. Manufacturing Research Lab was started in 2012. Dr. H.S. Vidhi contacted us. So he wanted a 3D image of this lung of that patient.
My patient was a 23-year-old young man. His parents told me that he had been blue and there was this mass where the blood was recirculating. That's called the arteriovenous malformation. An X-ray and a CT scan is a two-dimensional.
For converting that particular ICOM images to the STL file, and those files were actually printed in the SE Uprint 3D printer.
I'll show you the print. So this is the 3D print. And all these branches are exactly as they are in the body, because I could not see through the blood, through the lung. This was actually present in our operation theater. So it just took us, I think, about 1.5 hours, something which would have taken 4 hours. Because again, we had an absolute knowledge of where the artery is. The blood loss was next to nil. This was a great boon to us. Within 2 days, we were able to send him home. And his nails, you will see, are absolutely pink now. So hats off to technology.
So apart from the 3D models, anatomical models that had been used for the surgical plannings, there has been cases has been done by us for the prosthesis design for the eye surgery. So in this particular case, we can make a model for the eye surgeries for the prosthesis designs, and we can print the models into the full color with textures into the rubber like material using a polyjet technology, which can be used as a reference to create a biocompatible prosthesis for the surgeries for such cases. Also, we can use a 3D printed model to make the patient specific implants and for their pre-surgery fitment checks, so that doctors can understand the placements of the implants that has been manufactured for the patient specific, and how those implants can be fitted in on the patient's body, where to cut the bones, from where to they have to cut the bones, how to place those implants on the bones of the patient. So with a 3D printed model, we can also understand about the implant surgical plannings. The second application that comes with the 3D printed models is for the training models for the educational purposes. So with the 3D printed models for a particular case specific, for a particular disease specific, we can develop the models from real human anatomy by using the DICOM images. We can train the trainees, students, or the any fellow doctors in any environment. With the 3D printed models, it can simulate the real tissue properties. You can make or fabricate a model with a range of clinical scenarios and pathology. These 3D printed models can also simulate the blood flow with active flow loops. You can also incorporate the access points and the advanced sensors into the 3D printed models, so that it gives you the feedback as per you require into the actual surgeries into the operation theater. You can also store these models digitally and print it anytime, so that you can reduce the storage spaces and the cost to maintain those models. So for the clinical trainings and for the educational purposes into the healthcare institutes or in the healthcare colleges, medical colleges, there has been many colleges or institutes in India and globally who have developed their in-house capability by by purchasing the in-house Stratasys 3D printers, and they have developed their facilities to make the training models for the patients, for the students, and also for the doctors, so that they can train on these simulated models. So it is like a flight simulators where you can practice for number of hours before you get the expertise and you get into the operation theater for such complex cases. So this is one short video about from CBMTI, that how such models can be made for different departments, and how these models has been able to provide them a solution instead of the cadavers, where they can make any complex or any case specific models where they can train the students or the doctors, and it can be used as a simulator device, as a simulator facility, to train the any of the doctors or students for number of hours before entering into the operation theater.
I'm Professor Dr. Vignesh Warren, Professor of Neurosurgery and the head of the Department of Surgery at University Malaya. I'm also the director of the Center for Biomedical and Technology Integration, or CBMTI. So we were one of the first groups that pioneered the use of 3D printing for training in neurosurgery. When we first started to develop our models, we only had printers that could print in a single material. And the problem with that was we had difficulties mimicking skin and bone and cartilage and mucous membrane and tumor, for instance. Once we got hold of a Stratasys multi-material printer, we were then able to print models which could mimic, for instance, the texture of the nose, the linings of the nose, as well as the more firm and harder tissues at the back of the nose. And this we found very useful, especially when we were wanting to teach our trainees how to handle various tissues. One of the issues was color.
I'm Yuvraj Kumar Balakrishnan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at CBMTI. If you look at this particular model here, this is basically done by the C2 machine, which allowed us to print in various different materials, but it was just one color. We then had to basically inject a certain dye into a cavity in order for us to create what's called a tumor.
So the new printer that has come out from Stratasys, the J750, has overcome the problem of color. And this allows us to create models with both texture and color variation, and so mimic actual tissue handling and tissue appearance better for these complex models.
My name is Peppa. I'm a professor of ear, nose, and throat in University of Malaya. When you use a 3D model that comes with a tumor or a lesion, you actually replicate a real-life situation. So it's very important to have color. You need to see that the bone is white, the mucosa is pink. Only if there's a color separation, then only you know you're on the right plane. So here you have a model of the head based on a patient with pathology, and you're simulating the entire surgery exactly how it is before the surgery itself. So this is exactly like a flight simulator. A pilot who sits and does certain hours in the flight simulator before he gets certified to fly.
The surgeons that train on these models are much better prepared in terms of dealing with complex surgeries, simply because they are able to train and retrain on these models until they perfect certain procedures. And the most important thing here is the model allows the usage of the relatively same equipment that they would be using on the real surgery.
We're also using our 3D printers to develop prototypes of various tools and devices. In addition to that, we've also been developing models to explain to patients about surgery.
The ability to print all this model at one go, put in various different materials with the color in it, all this is only possible with the PolyJet technology.
Also, there has been one more example from Create City, a Singapore 3D printing company, who has came forward for the medical institutes or for the clinical trials or training institutes with the organization called AUMed. They have printed mannequins which has enabled the professionals, medical professionals, for the nasal swab trainings for the COVID-19 situation. So this is you can see the models that the complete body, the complete skin is has been 3D printed into transparent, and all the insides are printed with different color combinations so that they can understand the location of different anatomies and the tissues, and the professionals can practice on how to take the samples for from the throat or from the nasal areas. So, apart from the patient care and for the clinical training and the educational models, so these applications can be used in the healthcare colleges, medical colleges, for the clinical training institutes or educational institutes where you can make the patient specific or any case specific anatomical models without any including complex workflows. So you can use the DICOM images, convert into the 3D CAD models, and with the Stratasys printing technology, you can make any kind of the patient specific anatomical models, which help you can which where you can help out for the for the more clinical outcomes for the patient point of care, and also to train the fellow surgeons and the students for the clinical trainings, and you can prepare them for more complex surgeries in a very controlled environment without spending a lot of money, a lot of investment for the storage of the cadavers, and you can print it those models anytime and anywhere. And also, when it comes for the hospital innovations, the medical device companies who makes the surgical tools, surgical devices, or the medical devices, so for their prototyping purposes, from their concepts to design, and also for their functional parts, for the testing purposes, for the clinical trial purposes, we can use the 3D printing technology. So this technology can be used where you want to move quickly from your concepts to design to physical prototypes, to create the functional parts for the testings, to refine designs quickly through rapid iterations of the designs. And it makes the 3D models makes to communicate the ideas and gain the partner feedback in a much more efficient manner, and it reduces your miscommunications with the vendors or with the doctors who gives the feedbacks by using the prototypes for the for the surgical purposes or the medical devices for the testing purposes. So the medical devices is actually into the two categories. We can define it into the two categories. So the general purpose medical devices like the ventilators, glucometers, health bands, ECG machines, or any devices which are essentially the electromechanical devices, and have the same manufacturing and product development process and approach like any non-medical electromechanical device. So the devices like the surgical tools which are used in the operation theaters, or the medical devices, the medical instruments like the ventilator, ECG machines, which has been developed by the medical device companies, by their manufacturers, by their design engineers, so that their design engineers can actually use this technology to make the prototypes, and they can incorporate all the electromechanical components inside the 3D printed prototypes, and then they can test out their medical devices before actually going into the final production. Second one is the patient specific medical devices like the fibula guides or the tooling guides for the implant placements or the for the implant surgery plannings. So these such of that these patient specific devices can be fabricated, designed and fabricated for a patient specific operations to cater a medical issue, specific medical issue or disease. So this is one of the examples from one of a very known company globally, Medtronics. Their Medtronic company uses a Prosthesis technology, and they use a biocompatible material which is polycarbonate, which is also USP Classic certified material. So as you can see in the photo, from the design to making the prototypes and for the testing purposes, they use the FDM technology from Stratasys, FDM and PolyJet technology, both of them. So they use the FDM technology to make the prototypes for their surgical devices or medical devices, and they use the PolyJet technology to make the anatomies to test out their developed medical devices, so that they can do the both things in house. They can do the in-house product development for the surgical devices, and they can also make any case specific or patient specific, or to test out their devices they can make the clinical trial models by using the PolyJet technology, by making any kind of the anatomies. There is one more company, one more example here is called the Psych Medical. So their first project was the creation of a drug delivery system which enables a patient suffering from neuropathic pain. So the challenge was there that they have to develop the prototypes from design to prototype in just 6 weeks to bring out the investors on board. The challenge was also involved with the small size product components, and they have to complete the prototype with all the functional testings within 6 weeks. For this solution, they brought in the Stratasys PolyJet 3D printer in-house, and the results were that within 2 weeks spans of time, the design testing has been done with 80% 3D printed parts. They were able to save a lot of lead time with in-house 3D printer capability, and they were able to complete the project time before their deadlines. And it enables this faster iteration of the device. It enables them to bring out the device into the market in a much more faster manner. So let's hear from the Psych Medical company, their experts, their designers, their owners, that how this technology has helped them to bring out their designs into a real functional testings within their deadlines.
The idea for a metered dose inhalation device for cannabis came from a very deep pain by the medical community and the patients themselves. There was tremendous challenges in actually controlling the dosage of a drug which has, of course, therapeutic properties, but also has psychoactive properties.
One of the types of pain that we are facing quite frequently, and it's really hard to control, is what we call neuropathic pain. One of the things that are basics for patient-doctor's relationship is that the doctor knows what they are giving the patient. And I think that until we got the psyche, we haven't been really able to know what we give the patient.
Our first device that we went to clinical trials with was roughly 80% printed. Before printing it, we were using CNC machining and all these methods that were very common, but we found it very slow and expensive and limited.
At that point, we recognized the potential and the power that 3D printers is giving us as a company to accelerate through these types of processes.
Once we brought the 3D printer in-house, we had 6 weeks to finish the design and reach our goals. And not only did we reach our goals on time, we actually made it better.
We faced one major challenge, which was the inhalation pattern. Different patients inhaled in different ways.
We used 3D printing to design our airflow system in a way which is impossible to do in any other method. Geometry-wise, this is impossible to do to this day without a 3D printer. This allows us to control the airflow of our device in a very, very specific manner and achieve very precise dosage
we cut so many corners by developing it in that way, and it worked beautifully. It did all that it was intended to do, and we sailed through the clinical trial with amazing results.
For the first time, takes the cannabis herb and give it to the patient in a way which is comparable to other medications that are used in the market by physicians.
The motto at Psyche is don't think, print. So what I mean by that is that by printing it, it actually accelerates your thinking process because you have that object in your hand. So we're pushing our engineers, don't wait for that final CAD design where you're 100% sure. Print throughout the design process, have it in your hand, get that physical interaction with that product while you're thinking and while you're designing it. Don't wait for that. And that will accelerate the end result.
I would recommend using 3D printing from the very beginning for any medtech company, from concept to prototyping to clinical trials. Every step of the way can be solved better with a 3D printer.
There is one more example here from an Indian-based company called Labomat, which has been into the market since 2006, and they make a very high quality products, and they have been recommended and recognized as a top 10 brands in medical diagnostic devices globally. So they make the devices of high-end ophthalmic devices like a professional stereo microscope, surgical microscope, colposcope, for the pharmaceutical and bioengineering for ophthalmology and gynecology industries. So the challenge they were facing is that there were very longer lead times when it comes to the prototyping with outsourced vendors. Also, the cost was involved for prototyping their components was very high. And through the miscommunication with the vendors, it used to take a lot of time to get their prototypes in their hand. So for this solution, they have brought in in-house 3D printing technology, the FDM technology by Prosthesis. And since then, they have been able to save a lot of lead time and cost savings in their prototyping stage. So as you can see the data also on their screen shared by them, then when they were outsourcing, it used to take per part about 4 weeks of time. And with in-house capability, they are able to fabricate any component within a day, and there has been a lot of savings in their time and also the cost involved for making a prototype in-house. So along with the technology, the materials that we have also makes it possible for this particular application into the healthcare sector. So our innovative materials makes it possible all these applications. The materials that we have are the bone matrix, gel matrix, and tissue matrix. And with these unique material combinations, we are able to make realistic models that vary in softness, flexibility, and also it can mimic the biomechanical properties of any tissue or bones. So let's see this video of how these materials and the polyjet technology enables the doctors and the institutes to make any kind of the models with mimicking the biomechanical properties using these materials.
The Jacobs Institute is really designed to collaborate with industry and physicians to drive innovation. We need industry to provide better tools for us to continue to what we do, which is develop tools for physicians to train and test in different clinical environments.
In an ideal world, if you wanted to practice a procedure before you actually do it on a patient, you want to replicate every element of that procedure. You want to know how the tissue is going to feel as you're delivering a device. You want to understand how all the different gadgets that you're going to use for the procedure, how will they behave in that particular anatomy.
Anatomical models that I've been seeing since I was in medical school, they really did not have any semblance of reality in terms of their behavior when you utilize them. We would rehearse device deployment, usually in silicone models with some fluid, some water, some glycerol, and it was grossly unsatisfactory.
About 5 years ago, we started working with Prosthesis on what is 3D printing doing in medicine, and the JI and our partners here in Buffalo truly believe that it's the future of medicine.
My first exposure to 3D printing, it was a real sort of eye-opening experience. variants where 3D printing, well, you print what you need for the particular task that you have, where we can now incorporate plaque within arteries and thicker walls versus thinner walls, and with fluids, make it feel real.
One of the questions we've repeatedly heard from our customers, both medical device customers as well as hospitals, is the need for biomechanical accuracy. The biomechanical accuracy that the digital anatomy printer provides is really what's differentiating this solution from anything that's on the market today.
In terms of digital anatomy printing materials, there's now gel matrix, there's tissue matrix, and there's bone matrix. They all can be used, different mechanical properties, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So the software is a really huge part of where this is all going. GrabCAD Print now allows us to really select and drop down menus certain materials on a point-by-point voxel-based approach.
GrabCAD Print really revolutionizes how we design medical models today for anatomical modeling. So instead of going in and saying, I want a white femur bone, we can go in and select a femur for a 70-year-old. If you want a femur for a 20-year-old, we can do that. We can vary the density of our structures on our bones.
We're having third parties validate the biomechanical properties of the materials that come with the digital anatomy printer. So the Jacobs Institute, companies like Medtronic, they are conducting third-party testing to compare how those materials compare biomechanically to native tissue, to native bone, to specific anatomies and pathologies that you'd expect to see in practice.
So now we're using digital anatomy of areas and applications we've never done before. And these are things that you have to pierce, you have to cut the model. We weren't able to do that before.
The long-term goal of the digital anatomy printer is to replace the need for cadavers, to replace the need for animal studies, where it gives our customers the option of having specific anatomies and specific pathologies that are not currently accommodated by either cadavers today or animal studies. The digital anatomy solution today is only the beginning. Every year for the next 3 to 5 years, we will come out with additional materials, additional applications and software solutions that increase the capabilities of the digital anatomy printer.
The Stratasys partnership in terms of the JI mission is absolutely paramount. We would not be able to accomplish our mission without partnerships like Stratasys.
So for the healthcare sector, we bring out the complete solution from our Stratasys, from the Stratasys technologies, FDM and PolyJet. We can meet the new standards for the planning, educational, and for the testing models for the medical device companies or for the healthcare institutes, medical colleges, for clinical training institutes, or to develop a new facilities where you can bring this technology in-house and you can use this technology to make the multi-material and multicolor models where you can create the full color vivid mixed material medical models without sacrificing the patient specific accuracies. You can also create the drilling or the cutting guides that are sterilizable and the biocompatible materials which can be used into the operation theaters for the patient point of care for the patient operations. You can also produce more models in a single and a mixed tray print. So this is the solution that we have brought out by Stratasys for the healthcare sector, and this is how 3D printing can be used for all the sectors into the healthcare solution. So thank you everyone to attend this webinar and allow us to explore and give you the solution into the healthcare sector. and you can contact us to understand more about this technology and how you can bring out this technology in-house to cater your solutions, to cater your challenges related to your healthcare sector. So thank you everyone, and we can now take the questions in the chat box.